Hello everyone and welcome to another Orland Park Public Library Tiny Painting Corner. Today we are going to be painting Dr. Seuss Dreamland. Half of you guys will have a pre-drawn landscape canvas and the other half will have a blank canvas. For those with the blank, I will show you how to draw the landscape. So we are going to need a pencil. We will also need our 3 paint brushes. We have our flat brush, we have our medium-sized brush, and we have our small detail brush. And then we will have our cup of soapy water, featuring the boys as always. Don't forget, we have our paints and you need paper towels. Let's get started drawing. So, what you're going to do first is we're going to start with our mountains. For our mountains, you are going to make an upward curved line and connect it on the top, going an upward angle, and make the curved line going down. You're going to do this for both mountains. And then you're going to connect a little circle right at the top. Next, we are going to draw our hill in the background. It's going to be a continuation from the left corner to the right. And then we are going to draw 2 stems, one shorter than the other, for our lorax trees, and draw a squiggly S shape for our squiggle trees. One in the back, in between 2 mountains, a 3rd lorax tree next to our left foreground mountain, and then we will draw a 2nd squiggle tree on our right in front of our chunkier mountain. I'm going to take you in just a little bit so you can see more of the detail. What we're going to do is do our lorax trees. To do that, we are going to do quick swoops around in a circle. Make sure not to connect them. We are going to do this for all of the trees that are our lorax trees, and we're going to do them in various sizes. Don't forget to erase the small mountain that is inside of our now lorax tree. We're also going to draw over and extend the first mountain because I wanted it to be just a little bit thicker, so we're going to extend that just a little bit. If you like the way yours look, you don't have to do that. And we're going to go back to our lorax tree and just complete the swooping quick motion in a circular pattern. They are quick wisp around in a circle. Our next step is for us to draw our squiggle trees. Think of drawing a flat cloud. And then you're going to have just a little bit of a peak right at the top. But it's basically a flat cloud that we are drawing for these squiggle trees. Our next step is that we're going to add just one more lorax tree. I really wanted it there. And it's going to be a smaller one. So just quickly draw that right there. And don't forget to erase the background that might be inside the tree. And I accidentally got some pencil markings on there trying to scrape away the eraser shaving, so you can just quickly erase that away. Now, our final part of what we're going to be doing is drawing the lines. They're going to be curved lines, not straight. So you want to have a bit of a curved motion. They're not fully circular, but just slightly rounded lines. We're going to extend the mountain, and these curved lines are going to go throughout the entirety of the foreground and the background for the mountains. We want to keep the stripes on both of the hills. Make sure when you are doing the lines next to the squiggle tree trunks, you're going to want to stay clear of those. It's okay to go around the lorax trees, but since the squiggle tree trunks are a little thicker, you're going to want to stay clear of those. But here we have it. We have our finished landscape. So let's get into the painting. Okay, so our first step is that we are going to paint the mountain. So to start off, we are going to take our cup of water, use our medium-sized brush, wet it a little bit. we are going to get off that excess water because we do not want too many water globs getting on our painting. And then we are going to dip in to this pink color right here. And then we're going to begin. First, we're going to go into this circle part right here. And we're going to paint that in. And now with this painting, it's going to follow a pattern. And the pattern goes pink, starting right here. It's going to go pink, yellow, purple, and then you go pink again. So basically the pattern is going to be you paint a pink and then you skip two. Paint a pink, skip two. This is our first coat, so you do not have to worry about it being a little shoddy right now. It's gonna look a little thinner than what we like, but we are gonna go back in with the second coat. So right now we're just gonna go with our first coat. And this is going to extend down into the landscape right here. So you're going to take that pink and keep going into the landscape. We're going to keep this pattern going, but this is only going to be for the foreground landscape, not the background landscape. And there's no particular brush style I'm using to paint this part in. I am using a light stroke though. I'm not going too hard, I'm going very lightly. And that's where this pattern stops. This is going to be a different pattern, and so is this one in the back. So, our next step, clean off the brush again. And we're going to go into our second color. And our second color is going to be the yellow. So here's our yellow. We're going to dip into that. It's about this much. And the yellow goes directly under the pink. So whenever you see the pink, you're going to put the yellow. And you might see that there's some space right here, but we want to make sure that our pattern extends fully before we fill anything on over here. And so our last color for this here mountain is going to be the purple, which is our light lilac type color. I'm gonna dip into this one right here. Have to clean off some excess water. Don't want that dripping on there. That'll really ruin the painting. And so right here, the very tip is where you're going to put this purple starting off. And the purple is always directly under the yellow. And since it's the last color, it makes it much simpler. You don't have to really think about where to put it. You just fill in the white. And the only part over here that we're going to fill in is this one right here, because we do know that one to be purple. There we go, we have our first mountain, first coat. I'm gonna clean off the brush. Our medium-sized brush is gonna be our friend this painting. We're gonna be using this one the most. And we're gonna go over to the foreground right here and the back mountain. And this one is much simpler for the fact that it only uses 2 colors. We're going to be using this seafoam color right here and this orange color. And we're gonna start off with the orange. So we're gonna dip into the orange, like so. And we're gonna do the orange first. So every other color of the stripes are gonna be orange. And for the mountain, we're going to start off at the very tip right here, and that part's going to be orange. Not the inside. The inside part is going to be the seafoam. That part. Okay, and we got the orange bit done for the mountain for the first coat. Clean off our brush real quick. Get all that water off. I really like to wrap the brush when I'm getting the water off. I find it's more efficient with making sure that there's no water on the side, because it's very easily gets trapped around this metal area. So we are going to dip in to the seafoam. And we are going to fill in the white parts. I'm still using a very light stroke. I am going to use a light stroke for the majority of the painting. The only times I ever get a little bit heavier is when we're painting the background. I find it is much better when you are working with such small space to use a lighter stroke. And now we're actually going to paint this little white part right here. We are actually going to make that the seafoam color. Very light, using the very tip of the brush. And there we go. We got the background and the foreground nice and done with the mountains. Clean off our brush again. And then we are going to do our squiggly trees. Starting with the leaf color, we're going to go into our green, just normal green, not seafoam. For this, I use kind of a pattern when I'm painting it. I like to do a nice swirl, like you're making waves, to paint the trees, because it's already in a swirling pattern that if you're painting like this, you don't have to worry about going around the corners or anything, because the brush will naturally take you into the pattern that we drawn. Have our tree. Just clean off my brush. And then we are going to paint the trunk. And for that, you're going to go into the orange. Dip into there. And this one doesn't have a particular pattern. This one you are just painting up the trunk. I like to paint in upward motion for this. You don't have to do as many strokes as I do. I just have not the steadiest hands, so I don't make any mistakes. I do shorter strokes rather than longer ones. And I know it blends in with the background, but once we add in our outlines, that will be fixed. So we are going to let that dry. We are going to paint the lorax trees afterwards, after we do our second coatings. And we're going to clean off our brush and set it aside for later, and we are actually going to paint our sky. And so we're going to take our larger brush here and our large flat brush, wet it a little bit. There we go. Make sure it's relatively dry. We want it to be kind of damp instead of wet. And we're going to dip it into this blue. Just get it nicely on the tip here. And for painting the sky, I don't have a particular pattern. I just start painting. But when you get around the edges, you're going to want to use the side of the brush instead of the full brush, or you could paint in this type of motion. And do not use the big brush for the inside parts. We are going to switch brushes for that if you were thinking of going a little bit ahead. For parts like this, I like to just lightly dot it around. But the blue itself is a very deep blue, and the rest of our colors are a little bit more pastel right now, so it is very easy for it to get into the other colors. And it's almost a one coat type of paint as well. I find also it's easier to turn the painting around as you are going to different sections. Because it's not a very large canvas, it's just a 2 by 2 inch. It's much easier to maneuver that way. So around the edges, just doing the dots. So I don't get into the green too much, and then I go back to normal painting. You can see yourself and in camera how much deeper this blue is than it is to the rest of the paints. It's from the same company, however, it's just some paints are a little thicker than others. That's why I chose this blue for the sky. It's a very brilliant blue color. Nice and vibrant. And that's the look we're going for when we're doing a Dr. Seuss style painting. Very vibrant in some parts and then pastel in others. And so we're going to be done with our big brush here. So we're going to clean that off. Water might be a nice blue color. You can't really see in this lighting, but might be a nice baby blue. Clean that off for future usage. And we're going to go back to our medium-sized brush again. And that should already be cleaned off from before. We're going to dip into the blue. And we're going to paint around. Make sure not to get into your other lorax tree here. We're going to paint in the spots that the bigger brush was not able to get. And I'm just doing some light drags in upward motion. Be very careful on this part right here. I am just dotting the blue along the edge. Now if you want, you could do a second coat of blue if you feel like that's not enough. And if you want to, what you're going to do is you're going to put more blue on than you did before. Coat it about this much. And in areas like this, you're just going to take it and just drag it flatly, not using the tip like we've been doing. Drag it flatly down and go in nice curvature motions around different edges. Run out of paint on the brush, just do the same thing that you had before and just add a bit of that texture. You want to be careful about that second coat around these parts because you do not want to get it on the other parts of your painting. You might think in our lorax tree looks a little bit weird right here, but once we add the white, it's going to be better. There you have the second coat of blue, and you don't need to worry about that anymore. The rest of the painting. Now that our brush is cleaned off, again, we are going to set that aside and we are actually going to go in with our smaller detail brush here. With the smaller detail brush, that's how we're going to add the second coat so it's a bit more vibrant. Just like we did with the sky. When you have your bigger brush, you get your base coat on and then you use a slightly smaller brush to get that second coat to make it a little bit more vibrant. And since we have not wet this brush yet, we're going to want to wet it a little bit. So it's not completely dry. We're not doing any dry strokes. Clean it off, make sure it's nice and good. Just a little damp. And we're going to go back doing the same color pattern as we did before. So we're going to go from pink to yellow to purple to orange to seafoam. So, try to find my pink on the wheel. Going to dip into the pink, about this much. And we're just going to start filling in the pink for the second coat. I am being very light with this. It should feel like you're not even touching the canvas, how light your strokes are. It should kind of feel like you're almost floating on the canvas. And then we're going to clean off our brush. Go into the next color, which is yellow. Dip into it that much. I apologize if you're hearing sirens. It is the first Tuesday of the month. It's okay if you go a little bit outside of the lines when going for the second coat, because we are going to outline it in black, so it's probably going to cover that up anyways. With the yellow, some water, clean that off, and we're going over to purple. See, dipping into our purple color. And the fun part about the purple is it's one of the few colors in this painting is that when you add the second coat, it doesn't get darker, it actually gets brighter, it becomes lighter. Go. And as you see, our second mountain's already looking better because of that second coat. Now we're going to go into our background mountain, starting with the orange right here. Dip into that. About this much. Start filling it in. Here we go for the background mountain. Now, since we already have the orange, we are actually going to start filling in the tree trunk. Because what is the point of cleaning off the orange only to put it back on a little later? So we're about to get right back into the mountain, but we are just going to fill in the orange real quick on the tree trunk. I'm using the very tip of it. You might notice some weird black getting into there. That is from the pencil, but that is okay because we're going to be filling that in with black anyways for detailing. I'm gonna clean off the brush. And then go into seafoam. There she is. Dipping right on into the seafoam. I'm going for a second coat. It's much like our purple color, how it becomes a lighter color with the second coat. And my inspiration for this painting came from 3 different Dr. Seuss books. 2 of them are my absolute favorites. One of them was from Oh, the Places You'll Go. That's how I got the idea for these swirly mountains and backgrounds. From like the mountains you see in Oh, the Places You'll Go, they're pictured on the cover, but they're more pastel. And these swirly like trees right here, I got the idea from one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish. And that is one of my favorite Dr. Seuss books, probably my favorite next to All the Places You'll Go. And it was just a passing page. And I saw the trees and I thought they looked really cool. And so I wanted to add them in. And to no surprise, the lorax trees came from the lorax. I always loved those trees. They look so cool. And when they came out with the movie and they had the animated movie of it, I thought they looked so fluffy and nice. And I'm like, oh, I want to see trees like that in person. So of course I had no choice but to add them into the Dr. Seuss Dreamland. Okay, we have finished both the background and foreground second coat. So we're going to clean off the brush. We are getting into the trees fully. I know we already did the tree trunks for the swirly trees, but we are going to do the leaves now. Dipping in right here. And following the same pattern as before, the swirly pattern, to fill in the trees. It's just so much easier to fill in the trees this way. It makes it quicker so you don't have to worry about trying to trace that outline that we did. It'll just naturally make that pattern upon doing this. Don't be afraid to glob on that paint. You can use every bit of the green that you want on here because we will not be using the green again. It is just for the trees. So if you want it to have a deeper tree, just keep globbing on more and more paint. But not too much because then it'll take forever to dry. And there we go. Now, the moment you've been waiting for, because we have not touched it yet, we are going to do the lorax trees finally. And for that, we're going to go back to our old reliable medium-sized brush. We're going to dip into that, get into the water, clean it off, make sure it's nice and dry, well, damp, and we're going to dip into our white. Probably wondering when that white was going to come in. We haven't used it this whole time. They're specifically for the trees. Now I chose to do a white tree because I know in the lorax they have multiple different colors, but I chose to go for a white tree because everything else is colorful and I thought it was a really nice contrast. Now to paint the little swirls, you're going to go for the same motion that you did when drawing the swirls. So you're just going to just keep going around in circles like this, with light brush strokes and a wispy circular pattern, like so. It is very important to note that you want to keep this nice and fluffy. Like I mentioned how that was like one of my favorite parts of those trees, and how fluffy and plush they look. That's the same look you want to keep. See how it looks nice and plush? That's how you want to keep it. So you do not want to go too heavy on your strokes, because the moment you do that, it'll get rid of that illusion. You want the ends to be light. And clean off this brush. And we are going back to our BB brush, because now it is time for our second to last step, and that is to add the black background. We're going to do our outlining now. We're going to get into our black paint. Going to just have it just on the tip. Now this part, I'm going to take you in a little more so you can really see what's happening. Now you're going to want to be really light with this. This is very important because, as I mentioned before, when painting with black, once you make a mistake with black, it's really hard to go back. So we are going to draw the stem back into place. And if you're like me with not the steadiest hands, I do highly recommend going with shorter strokes. I never try to be ambitious when I have my black. I don't want to mess up all the hard work I just did. We're going to just go and do the little trunks for the lorax trees first. They're just black straight lines, no curves. I think so. And then I'm going to go in with the foreground mountain. And you're just going to outline the mountain very lightly. This is extremely light. I could barely tell I'm even touching the canvas. And I'm going with the side part or the very tip. Think of it like you are drawing a very delicate beginning part of a cursive lowercase L. Not sure if that is helpful to anybody, but that's how I think of it. It's the beginning works of a lowercase cursive L, right before you go into the loop. I'm going to do the same for over here. Or you can think of it as a fancy H, almost. And then lightly, you're going to go and get that circular part right here. You don't want your strokes, like your paint, to be too thick. You want it to be medium to very thin lines. Here. And paint those lines back in from before. Now you might be looking at this as we're filling it in. I know I haven't said this in a while, but truly trust the process when it comes to this part, because when I first painted this, I thought like I truly messed up the painting. I thought it looked amazing without the black outlines, but there's just one added detail that really brings it together and it makes it look like a Dr. Seuss illustration. It's the most subtle detail, but you will see after we do the base outline. I'm gonna dip back in there just a little bit. As you can see, like, my paintbrush barely has any paint on there. That's why I have to keep dipping back and forth, because it's better to keep dipping back and forth when it comes to this than to have a large glob of paint and then you mess everything up. With the black paint is to make sure that as you are planning on putting your brush down, that you are very careful not to touch it on the canvas before you are ready. Because I have done that before in a painting, and it was a deep purple color on a pastel sky, and then I had to change my entire painting to accommodate that large purple splotch. There's no going back once you get a really deep color in a light spot. So be very careful with your hand placements. I know it's very hard to see where the tree ends and the background begins, but it's there. It's there. Make sure to go in between that. And now we're actually going to get to this tree, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. Now this part, because it's so skinny, you want to make sure you are very light. Because if you put way too much paint on it, it just takes away the orange. You might even create a bit of a dry stroke, and that's okay. Well, see, now we can tell them apart, so that's nice. And then we are going to make little puffs. Think of it of like making a cloud almost. Like a flat cloud. Right at the bottom. And then right at the top. And you're going to go in like this. A bit of an embellished swirl going in. Kind of almost looks like a soft serve of ice cream. Now that we have the base of all this, I know it looks a little blocky, but there is just a slight detailing that really brings everything together, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So you're going to clean off the brush, and you are going to make this almost completely dry. You barely want any water on it. You're going to dip back into the black, and you're going to take the black. And along these lines, right here, just going to do quick little dashes. quick little dashes along here. It does not have to be any particular pattern, just quick dashes. You can make them long even. Just a little bit of paint. You don't even want a lot of paint on there, just the tiniest bit. And it really changes the look of it, and it makes it look how Dr. Seuss would it. I'm not sure how well you remember the illustrations, but in all the illustrations there was these little lines within them. It's these little black lines, and it just really brought a lot to it. They could be just like very quick dry strokes like that, or they could be deeper like this. And it's just the subtle thing to just add so much, just the slightest bit of detail. And use the very tip to get into these spots right here. And as for the trees, what you're going to do, dip into the black just a little bit, do that much. And you're going to do those lines, but you're going to make them a little swirly, like that. And then on the trunks, just little dashes back and forth. Little tiny dot dashes. Just the slightest on the hand. I'm using the very tip of the brush because it's so skinny, you do not want to go outside of it. And there you have it. See the difference it makes just to add those little lines. It's so weird. I don't get it. I don't fully get it. Oh, I see I missed a spot right here with the outline. Let me add that in. Now you could leave the painting like this and it'll look just fine. Or you could add a black outline along the lorax trees. And if you want to do that, I'm going to show you how to do that as well. Now, this is also something you want to be very careful about because it could easily just mess up the look of the lorax trees. You're going to take the brush, have the slightest bit of paint, and just along the edges, just tiny wisps, like so. You don't want to put too much pressure on the brush. You're going to take it in just a little bit, just like that. You're going to do that along all the trees. You want to use the very tip and side of the brush very lightly to go around in circles. It doesn't have to be on every single one, it's just on a few. That just adds a little bit of texture to the lorax trees. And yes, we have the finished painting. Now, as you notice, our sides are not painted. And in my original painting I have here, I have the sides painted. I have it painted a nice red. And you don't have to go with red, mainly because we do not have red paint in this kit. But the color I like to go with that I think looks really nice with this painting, if it wasn't red, would be the seafoam color. So do that. You get your flat brush again, wet it. Make sure it's like relatively damp. And then you're gonna hold the painting with your middle finger and your thumb. And you're going to hold it like this. You place your thumb in this corner, your middle finger in this color. It should just slide in like you're twisting. And then you have free range without it getting on your fingers. And so Let me get the paint in here. And dip it in just on the tip, like so. And then you just paint the sides. I'm using the very top of it so I don't get it on the front. And that is something that's kind of hard to do sometimes. I'm not going to lie. You just have to make sure that you just barely touch the edge so you don't get too much of the paint on the front. Go, and you see we got a little paint on the top, but that's okay because the blue is easily fixed. That's the least of our worries. If you get it on the blue, it's the least of our worries. You take the blue paint, dip it in, and just color over it. We'll paint over it, and then you take off the excess and to just gently set it down. That off and just smooth that over like so. And here we have our Dr. Seuss Dreamland. I hope that was a nice and easy painting for you. This is one of our more simpler paintings we've ever did, but I think it's really fun and it's really cute. I hope you guys had a really good time doing this. I hope it was fun and hope to see you guys next time. Bye.